and get into this rather impressive yet disappointing season for Joe Burrow and the Bengals. I mean, Joe Burrow, he's been fantastic. Like there's really no other word to describe how well he's been playing aside from fantastic. Like he has been on a ridiculous tear against a lot of teams, and it's incredible. Like there was a little bit of a slump in the beginning of the year where they ended up losing to New England, and then they lost to Kansas City, and they ended up losing to Washington despite never punting in that game, right? So really the first game was like the bigger fluke loss compared to the other two games because Kansas City, they've been incredibly lucky this season, like we all know that. And Washington, they've been in ridiculous surprise this season. We also know that. But in most of the other games that were played in this season so far by the Bengals, they've been scoring a lot. Like the Bengals, they've scored 30 points in like five or more games, I want to say, and in about all of those games they ended up losing. Like he had a 38-33 loss against Washington because on third down, Jaden Daniels threw this ridiculous touchdown pass in the red zone, and I did not expect Washington to score on that final possession like that. I thought they were going to run it out and take a field goal, but they capitalized and they ended up scoring a touchdown, which was incredible. Then they lost to the Baltimore Ravens in overtime, 41-38. They lost to the Eagles, 37-17. They lost to the Ravens again, 35-34. The Chargers, 34-27, and then recently they lost to the Steelers, 44-38. Now, what does this mean? Their defense is absolutely atrocious. The Bengals are letting Joe Burrow down strictly because of his defense. Strictly because of their defense. He is the only quarterback to throw 30 passing touchdowns or with 5 fewer interceptions through the first 12 games and have a losing record. The rest of the other quarterbacks that have done that were Aaron Rodgers, 3 times, by the way, in 2011, 2014, and 2020. In 2020, he had a 9-8 record. In 2014, 9-3, excuse me. In 2020, he had a 9-3. 2014, he had a 9-3 record. And in 2011, he was undefeated up until that point. Tom Brady did this in 2007, was also undefeated. Find it completely ironic how the two quarterbacks that were undefeated ended up losing to the Giants in the postseason. But regardless, Drew Brees ended up going. He ended up doing it as well in 2018, but he went 10-2. And Patrick Mahomes in 2020 did that, and he went 11-1. Joe Burrow, on the other hand, is 4-8. This Bengals defense is absolutely atrocious and has been completely selling out Joe Burrow throughout the entirety of this season. Like it's incredible. And what's even more incredible to me is how the Giants, they were able to hold the Bengals to just 17 points. Like, the fact that they were able to do that is, in my opinion, nothing short of impressive. But, I mean, these numbers from Joe Burrow were absolutely ridiculous in some of these losses. I mean, the first loss to Baltimore, 392 passing yards to 5 touchdowns and 1 interception. The second loss to Baltimore, 428 passing yards and 4 touchdowns. The loss to the Chargers, 356 passing yards and 3 touchdowns. The loss to the Steelers, 309 passing yards and 3 touchdowns. And really, when you let the Steelers drop 44 points on you, that's a very, very bad defense because the Steelers, they're a team, while in my opinion they're a good team and they're able to find ways to win, they're also a very ugly team to watch. And they're a team that doesn't really have that much of a consistent offense. Most of the games when I do see them play, it's just field goal, field goal, field goal, defense, field goal, field goal. It's just field goal after field goal. They don't really put the ball in the end zone all that much, except in this game where it was basically a shootout in over there. And it's really unfortunate with the way that this season is going for Joe Burrow, because if he was able to, if they were able to win some of these games, and if they actually had a positive record, then chances are Joe Burrow would be in MVP conversations because the numbers, the individual numbers that he has are by far one of the best in the entire league amongst quarterbacks. And it's just, obviously, I'm not going to count out Lamar Jackson whatsoever because Lamar Jackson is also an MVP frontrunner. Same with Josh Allen. But the difference between the two is that the wins, right? The wins are a very huge difference, right? So for Lamar Jackson, obviously his numbers are also MVP caliber, and they definitely deserve the utmost respect as well. And let's see. So right now he has 29 passing touchdowns, which is just one less than Joe Burrow, and he has two less interceptions as well. He does have him close with Joe Burrow in yards. Like, the numbers, they're marginal. They're like really, really close. But the big difference, the big separator from Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow is obviously team record, which is very unfortunate to say because it's like, this really reminds me of the Drew Brees and the Saints and that little era of football that we've had. I mean, I remember when Drew Brees, like when he was on the Saints. Now, the stretch that I'm primarily talking about was in 2014 to 2016, but there were also several other stretches where it was more or less the same thing with the Saints, right? Like the Saints, when they had Drew Brees, their defense would be absolutely atrocious, but their offense would be phenomenal. So for 3 years straight, they went 7-9. And in every single one of those years, the trend was absolutely consistent. Their offense was brilliant with Drew Brees at quarterback, but their defense would be ranked either last in the NFL or dead or close to last in the NFL. It's like, and to make matters worse, they would end up losing way more in the playoffs because his defense, the Saints defense would let Drew Brees down when the lights are the brightest. I remember there was a game against the Niners, I believe it was, in the postseason where Drew Brees had one of the best overtime, not the best overtime, but one of the best closing performances from any quarterback that we've seen. So, like, the game was really close, and Drew Brees, in this game, he threw 2 interceptions, and, like, obviously, he's not going to be perfect, but he ended with, like, 400 passing yards and 4 touchdowns, including 2 go-ahead touchdown drives in the final quarter of the game, and he still ended up losing because the Saints would just completely collapse on the defensive side of the ball. This was a trend that was constant throughout Drew Brees in his career. In fact, in one of the most popular regular season games, the Superdome duel between Eli Manning and Drew Brees, I mean, there was no defense being played all day, and the only defense that was actually played was from the Giants. Meanwhile, Drew Brees had to practically will his team to win with throwing, I think it was like 7 touchdowns in that game. It was ridiculous just how many touchdowns they ended up throwing together, because I believe they combined for, how many touchdowns was it? I think it was 13 touchdowns that they combined for. I don't know. The game was a very long time ago, and let me see. I'm trying to like figure out exactly. Yeah, because like the final score of this game was absolutely ridiculous. It was video game numbers practically, the final score of this game. But I believe, yeah, he did end the game with 7 touchdowns, and he also ended the game with 2 interceptions, which was the defense that was being played in that game. But there was no defense being played all day from the Saints, and similar to how there's no defense being played like when Drew Brees was on there, this is really like a similar thing with Joe Burrow. Is he going to be the next Drew Brees going into the future? I don't know, but let me say, this Bengals defense is absolutely disgusting, and that's all that I really have. I just wanted to bring that to the attention because like this is a phenomenal quarterback who's putting up phenomenal numbers, but is just unable to really gain any sort of traction or recognition because there's a good chance that he's not going to make the playoffs. And there's also an even higher chance that he's not going to win the MVP because of team record. So that's all that I really have to say. Let me know in the comments what you guys think of Joe Burrow in this season. So now we're going to go ahead and go into this third segment where we talk about the MLB and the new rule that they're thinking of putting in, which I completely, strongly, with the full passion of my burning heart, disagree with. So I will be right back after this short break. Be sure to stay tuned for that.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.